The moment you stop giving her the attention she's used to, you'll see a side of her you were never meant to see, and it will tell you everything you need to know about who she really is. I'm not talking about subtle changes. I'm talking about an immediate shift in how she treats you, how she talks to you, how she moves around you. One day, you're the center of her world. The next, she's testing you harder than ever, rewriting history, seeking validation from anyone who will give it, and playing the victim to win sympathy. It's not love you're seeing. It's control slipping away. And if you're not prepared, you'll get pulled right back into her game. But here's the truth. This moment, the one that feels like rejection, is actually the most powerful turning point you'll ever get. It's the point where you either crumble like most men, chasing back the attention you lost, or you stand firm, hold your frame, and take back control over your life. This is where Stoicism becomes more than just a philosophy. It becomes your armor. The discipline to remain unmoved, the strength to not take the bait, the wisdom to see that your worth was never in her approval to begin with. The ancient Stoics taught that a man's freedom comes from mastering himself, not controlling others. When you understand that, you stop reacting to her behavior and start building a life that makes her behavior irrelevant. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly how a woman really reacts when she realizes you're no longer interested. Not the fairy tale, not the Hollywood script, but the raw, unfiltered truth. And more importantly, how you can use it to transform not just your relationships, but your entire life. Because the man who can watch her reaction without losing himself is the man who wins every time. Number 1. She tests harder than ever. When she senses you are no longer clinging to her every word, when your energy has shifted from constant engagement to calm detachment, she feels it in ways she can't always explain, but she knows something has changed, and that change shakes the foundation of her control. So instinctively she begins to test you harder than she ever has before, not because she wants to save the relationship or reconnect emotionally in a healthy way, but because her ego cannot tolerate the idea that she is no longer the one setting the tone. She is no longer the one who dictates the pace. She is no longer the unquestioned priority in your daily life, and so she pulls out every tool she's used before, plus some you haven't seen yet. She might withdraw affection to see if you will chase her. She might suddenly act overly interested in another man and watch your reaction like a hawk. She might start arguments over trivial things just to provoke an emotional response that reassures her you're still emotionally invested. She might even test your loyalty by subtly inviting situations where you feel the urge to defend yourself, all of which are designed to pull you back into the role of the chaser. This is where most men fail because they confuse these tests with opportunities to prove themselves. But if you understand what's really happening, you will recognize that the more you jump to meet her demands, the more you confirm her dominance in the dynamic. So the solution is not to fight her, not to match her games, and certainly not to beg for her approval. The solution is to pass the test by refusing to take it, by standing so firmly in your own frame that no test can shake it. Which means you remain calm when she accuses you of changing, you remain composed when she acts distant, and you don't reward provocations with the attention they're designed to provoke, because every time you choose stillness over reaction, you reinforce the truth that your self-worth is not up for negotiation. And when you stop being predictable in your responses, you stop being controllable, which will either force her to adapt to the new dynamic or expose the fact that her interest was never about who you are, but about how much validation you could provide her. And the moment you realize this, you stop personalizing her tests and start treating them as signals. Signals that you are finally shifting the power back into your hands. Signals that your emotional energy is no longer freely available to be exploited. Signals that you have stepped into the position of the man who is chosen rather than the man who chases. And this is where you must double down on your focus on yourself. Because in moments like this, the temptation to slip back into old patterns is strong, so you train yourself daily to respond less and act more on your own goals. You use her tests as reminders to put more time into your fitness, your business, your mission, your friendships, and your peace, because a man whose life is full has no need to pass anyone's test. And the irony is, when you live that way, you pass them all without even trying. And if you're serious about mastering that ability, about becoming the man who never bends under pressure, I've put everything you need into the Stoic Relationship Blueprint, the exact framework that shows you, step by step, how to recognize every test, respond with unshakable composure, and keep the power in your hands no matter what she throws at you. It's linked in the comments, and once you get it, it's yours for life. No one can take it from you, and you can return to it whenever you need a reminder of the principles that keep you centered and in control. This isn't just information, it's the kind of knowledge that changes you forever, the kind you'll wish you had years ago, and the kind that ensures you'll never lose yourself in a relationship again. Number 2. Her ego takes the first hit. When your attention starts to fade, when your calls become less frequent, when your conversations shift from being about her to being about your own pursuits, the first thing she feels is not heartbreak. It's a deep, sharp blow to her ego, because for many women, your constant attention isn't just a bonus. It's the fuel that reinforces her self-image as desirable, important, and in control. And when that fuel supply drops suddenly, she is forced to confront a question she may not have faced in a long time. What does it mean if I'm no longer the center of his world? And this is not a comfortable question for her, so she reacts in the only way that feels natural. She works overtime to restore that feeling of being wanted, which could mean she starts posting more calculated images on social media. She starts dressing more provocatively when she knows you'll see her. She might even casually mention the attention she's getting from other men, all with the unspoken aim of triggering your competitive instinct, so you return to giving her the attention she craves. And in this moment, you need to understand something critical. Her sudden uptick in effort is not a sign that she values you more. It's a sign that she values how you made her feel about herself. And if you take the bait and rush to reassure her, you reinforce the idea that her worth determines your behavior. But if instead you hold your ground, focusing on your own mission and refusing to feed her ego at your own expense, you send a message far more powerful than words. You show her that you can stand on your own, that your validation comes from within, and that your identity is not tied to how much you please her. And this is where Stoic principles matter more than ever, because a Stoic man does not let another's perception determine his self-respect. A Stoic man measures himself by his actions, his discipline, his values, not by the approval of someone who might withdraw it tomorrow. So when her ego takes that hit, you let it, because it's not your job to protect her from the discomfort of losing priority in your life. And if she chooses to deal with that discomfort by seeking validation elsewhere, you don't stop her. You simply continue to live in a way that makes you proud, because in the long run, a woman will either rise to meet the standard you set, or she will drift away in search of easier validation. And both outcomes are in your favor, because either way, you remain free from the trap of building your worth around how much attention you can give to someone who values the feeling of being wanted more than the person who provides it. Number 3. She seeks validation elsewhere. When your attention, which she has grown used to as a constant presence in her life, begins to fade, when the calls that used to come without her asking are no longer coming, when the eyes that used to watch her every move now look past her without urgency, she feels the gap immediately, not because she necessarily misses you as a person in that moment, but because she misses the steady stream of validation your attention gave her. And for many women in the modern dating landscape, validation is not a bonus. It's oxygen. And when you cut off that supply, whether intentionally or simply because you're focusing on yourself, she goes looking for it somewhere else, sometimes subtly, sometimes blatantly. And this search can take many forms, from posting thirst-trap photos with captions that look innocent but are designed to invite comments, to laughing a little louder around certain men so you notice, to suddenly being too busy for you while finding endless time for others, to rekindling conversations with male friends she previously assured you were just like brothers. And if you are unprepared for this, you will misread it as her moving on or replacing you, and you will be tempted to reclaim her attention by competing with those new sources. But here's the hard truth. The moment you compete for her attention, you are no longer the prize. You've put yourself in the same category as every other man fighting for her gaze. And in doing so, you've thrown away the advantage your detachment gave you. So instead of chasing, you must recognize this as the clearest signal that the dynamic has shifted in your favor, because the fact she is seeking validation elsewhere means your absence is felt, your attention has weight, and if she has to go find it somewhere else, she is indirectly admitting that what you provided mattered. And in that moment, the most powerful thing you can do is to continue starving the cycle of instant reassurance, because a man who is firm in his value does not panic when someone seeks attention elsewhere. He stays committed to his path, his goals, his discipline, his purpose, and in time, one of two things will happen. Either she will return, curious and unsettled by the fact that you didn't react the way most men do, or she will drift further into the arms of those willing to give her the shallow validation she craves. And in both cases, you win. Because if she returns, it's on your terms, and if she doesn't, you've avoided locking your self-worth to someone whose loyalty was dependent on a constant stream of ego-feeding attention. Ask yourself why you would ever want to be in a position where you have to keep someone's ego afloat to keep them around, because the truth is, a relationship built on that kind of dependency is not love, it's a transaction, and the moment you stop paying, the deal falls apart. So the solution is to stop paying in the first place, and instead invest that energy into building a life where your sense of worth is never tied to whether or not a woman chooses you today, tomorrow, or ever, because the man who understands this does not chase validation. He commands respect, and when you live this way, you stop being an option and start being the standard. Number 4. Her respect for you spikes. When you stop pouring every ounce of your attention into her, when you no longer orbit around her moods and schedules, when your life suddenly revolves around something bigger than her validation, she might react with irritation, she might act colder, she might accuse you of being distant, but beneath all that, whether she admits it or not, her respect for you rises, because deep down she knows that most men collapse the second they sense a woman pulling away. They chase harder, they bend over backwards, they over-explain, they start compromising their standards in a desperate attempt to hold on, but you are doing the opposite. You are holding your ground, you are staying calm, you are not letting her emotional fluctuations dictate your state of mind, and that is rare in a world where most men's confidence is rented from female approval. This is the moment where your strength as a man becomes undeniable, not because you are trying to make her jealous, not because you are playing games, but because you are showing in real time that your life has its own center of gravity, that your worth is self-generated, and that you are perfectly capable of walking away rather than clinging to a situation that no longer serves you. And the truth is, women may enjoy constant attention, but they cannot truly respect a man who has no backbone, because respect is born from boundaries, from the awareness that you are not dependent on her to feel valuable. And when you live this way, your very presence communicates that you are a man with options, a man with standards, a man who knows his own mind. This is pure Stoicism in action, the philosophy of standing unmoved by the tides of approval and rejection, living by the words of Epictetus, who said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastering yourself means you are not swayed by her attempts to test, provoke, or lure you into an emotional chase. Instead, you remain fixed on your mission, your health, your discipline, your financial growth, your creative pursuits, and by doing so, you teach her and everyone else in your life that if they want your time, they have to bring value to the table, not just expect it as a default. And here's where the transformation happens. The more you operate like this, the less reactive you become, the more you value your time, the more you see every interaction as a choice rather than a need. And ironically, this is when she often becomes more engaged, more curious, more drawn in, because the man who doesn't need her attention to function is the man who she instinctively respects, and that respect, unlike fleeting attraction, is the foundation for any relationship worth having. So if you take nothing else from this, take this: stop measuring your worth by how much of yourself you can pour into someone else. Start measuring it by how much of yourself you can retain, protect, and grow, regardless of who is or isn't in your life. Because the day you truly internalize that lesson is the day you stop being replaceable in any meaningful way. Number 5. She rewrites the past. When the reality sets in that you're no longer as invested as before, when the attention she once took for granted is no longer flowing toward her like an endless river, when you stop centering her in every decision and instead put your focus on building your life, she is forced to reconcile a truth she doesn't want to face. She is no longer the unquestioned priority in your mind. And for many women, rather than sit with that discomfort and reflect honestly on their role in the shift, it is easier to rewrite the past into a story that protects their ego and places them in a position of control. So you may hear through mutual friends that she's now claiming she wasn't really that into you, or that she saw the signs early on, or that things were off for a long time. Not because those statements are objectively true, but because they allow her to frame the situation in a way where she is not the one who lost something of value. And if you aren't grounded, hearing this can tempt you into defending yourself, setting the record straight, and proving the real version of events. But that is exactly the trap you must avoid, because the moment you start trying to correct her narrative, you step into her frame, you validate her importance by showing you care deeply about how she is portraying you, and in doing so you reveal that you are still emotionally invested in her perception. But the truth is, her version of the past does not change the reality you lived. It does not alter the lessons you've learned, and it certainly does not dictate the future you are building. So instead of spending your energy fighting her revisionist history, you spend it on something far more powerful, living in such a way that the life you're building now speaks louder than any story she tells. Because no matter what words she uses, people notice patterns. And when they see you thriving, improving, and elevating, the contrast between her narrative and your reality becomes obvious. And over time, that quiet exposure is far more devastating to her ego than any direct rebuttal could ever be. In Stoic thought, this is the art of not being dragged into the theater of someone else's drama, of understanding that your worth is not determined in the court of public opinion, of accepting that people will distort reality to fit their needs, and realizing that it is not your responsibility to correct every distortion. It is your responsibility to live with integrity so that your life itself becomes the undeniable proof of who you are. And when you operate from this position, not only do you protect your energy, but you also make it impossible for anyone, past, present, or future, to hold power over you through false narratives, because the truth is, the man who does not defend himself against lies is often the one who stands tallest in the truth. Number 6. She plays the victim card. When she realizes that you are no longer reacting to her in the way you used to, when she feels the emotional distance that you have created by no longer placing her above your own peace, when she senses that the power dynamic is shifting away from her control, one of the most common tactics she will reach for is to cast herself as the victim in the story, not because she is genuinely wounded in the way she will claim, but because victimhood gives her two things she is desperate to reclaim: sympathy from others and moral leverage over you. So she might start dropping subtle comments to mutual friends about how you've changed, or you're not the same person anymore, or she might outright tell people that you have wronged her, painting the situation in a way that frames her as the innocent party and you as the one who caused the pain. Because in her mind, if she can convince others you are the villain, she regains the upper hand without ever having to address her own actions. And if you aren't prepared for this, you will feel the urge to fight back, to defend yourself, to correct the story so everyone knows the truth. But in doing so, you step directly into her trap, because defending yourself in the court of public opinion not only wastes your energy, it also validates the idea that her version of events matters enough to you to respond, which only feeds the narrative she is building. The hard but liberating truth is this: you do not have to attend every battle you are invited to. And in this case, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to play the role she has written for you. Because when you stop reacting to false accusations and start living in a way that makes your integrity obvious, the contrast between what she says and what people see with their own eyes will dismantle her narrative far more effectively than any defense you could mount. And here's where your mindset must shift from emotional to strategic. You cannot stop people from talking. You cannot control every story told about you, but you can control how unshakable your reality is. And when your actions, discipline, and results speak so loudly that they drown out the noise, you make yourself untouchable, because the truth is, those who know you will not be swayed by her story, and those who believe her without question are not people whose opinions should carry any weight in your life. In Stoic philosophy, this is the essence of self-governance. To focus only on what is within your control and to let go of what is not. And in practice, it means you spend zero time trying to convince the wrong people of the right thing, and all your time building a life so solid that even your enemies cannot deny your progress. And as you do this, something powerful happens. The victim card loses its value, because it only works when the audience is willing to buy it. And over time, when her words no longer match your reality, the sympathy she once received begins to fade, the narrative falls apart, and you are left not only with your dignity intact, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing you won by never stepping onto the stage she built for you. Number 7. She tries to pull you back in. Once she realizes that her tests aren't breaking you, her ego maneuvers aren't drawing you back, and her victim narrative isn't making you chase, she often resorts to the most tempting tactic of all, suddenly turning the warmth back on, reappearing in your life with the same charm, playfulness, and intimacy that first drew you to her. But this is rarely about genuine change or newfound appreciation for you as a man. It's a calculated move to re-establish the dynamic where she had the upper hand, so she might message you unexpectedly with a sweet memory, casually suggest meeting up, or even initiate physical closeness, all of which is designed to spark your emotions and trigger that old pattern where you drop your boundaries the moment she gives you the attention you've been conditioned to crave. And if you aren't brutally self-aware, you will mistake this as proof that she finally sees your value, when in reality it's often nothing more than a control check to see if she can still influence you at will, because if she can pull you back in after all her prior behavior, she knows she can keep you in a cycle of giving more than you receive. This is where you must pause and ask yourself a question that cuts through the emotion. If I go back, what am I going back to? Because in most cases what you are returning to is the same pattern that caused you to step back in the first place, only now with the added knowledge that she is willing to manipulate the emotional climate to keep you tethered. And the danger here is not just losing the ground you've gained, it's reinforcing to yourself that your boundaries are negotiable. So the solution is to anchor yourself in your long-term vision rather than your short-term feelings, to measure her actions not by the temporary warmth she shows now, but by whether her behavior over time aligns with the standards you've set for your relationships. And this requires the discipline to resist the lure of instant gratification, to remember that the same person pulling you close now was comfortable testing, dismissing, or even devaluing you when she thought you'd never walk away. And unless there has been a clear and sustained shift in how she shows up, the safest and most self-respecting choice is to keep walking forward on the path you've built without her. Because when you do this, you send a message not just to her, but to yourself. That your growth is not for sale, that your peace is not a bargaining chip, and that you refuse to trade the life you are building for the fleeting comfort of familiar affection. And the irony is, it's often at this point, when she realizes the door is truly closed, that her respect for you solidifies because she's finally seen that you are a man who will not betray himself just to keep someone else close. And whether she stays gone or tries again, you've already won because you've proven to yourself that you are loyal first and foremost to your own values, and no amount of attention, intimacy, or nostalgia can buy that back once you've made the decision to protect it. Number 8. She moves on, but still watches. Even when she appears to have completely moved on, when you see her with someone new or hear through the grapevine that she's living her best life, even when she makes sure her social media is filled with pictures and posts that project happiness and progress, there is often still a quiet thread of curiosity connecting her to you. Because the truth is, a woman rarely forgets a man who stopped giving her what she expected and refused to be pulled back into the old dynamic. And no matter how much time passes or who she's with, part of her will wonder how you're doing, whether you've changed, whether you've improved, and, most importantly, whether you've done it without her, so she might occasionally check your profile, ask a mutual friend about you, or find subtle ways to signal she's still aware of your existence. Not always because she wants to come back, but because she wants to know if the choice she made, or the situation she lost, has caused her to fall behind in any way. The mistake many men make here is interpreting this quiet observation as a sign that she secretly wants to return, and they open the door without realizing that some people look back not out of desire, but out of ego. And the danger in letting her re-enter is that you might confuse her curiosity for commitment, when in reality she may simply want the reassurance that she could still have your attention if she wanted it, which keeps her in control of the emotional narrative. So the way you turn this situation to your favor is by making sure that what she sees, whether directly or through others, is a man who has not only moved on but has grown in every measurable way. Because when you build a life so strong, so fulfilling, and so aligned with your values that you would never trade it for the past, you take away the power of her watchful eye, and instead of feeling pressure or temptation from her lingering presence, you use it as fuel to keep building, to keep proving to yourself that your worth was never tied to her approval or attention. And in doing so, you make yourself truly untouchable, because whether she admits it or not, the silent respect that comes from seeing a man thrive without her is far deeper than the temporary attraction she may have felt before. And while she might still watch, she will do so, knowing that she is watching a man who will never again hand over the keys to his happiness. A man who has taken the lessons from that chapter and used them to write an entirely new story. And that, in the end, is the only closure you ever need. Not her apology, not her return, not her acknowledgement, but the undeniable reality that you have built something better for yourself. Something no one can take away, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from knowing she will always see it, even if she never says a word. Most men will never hear this, and they'll spend years chasing women who test them, disrespect them, and drain them, all because no one ever taught them how to stand their ground. But you're here now, and you have a choice. Keep living on repeat, or take the step that changes everything. The Stoic Relationship Blueprint isn't just a book. It's a weapon, a shield, and a map for any man who's tired of losing himself in relationships. It will show you exactly how to handle every test, every power shift, and every manipulation with the calm, unshakable strength that earns lasting respect. And once you have it, it's yours forever. No one can take it from you. You can revisit it years from now and still sharpen yourself with the same principles that saved you today. So if you're ready to reclaim your frame and never hand over your power again, drop a comment saying, "I reclaim my power." Hit the like button and subscribe so more men can find these truths and save themselves from decades of regret. The link is in the comments. Get it now before you let another day slip into the hands of a woman who doesn't value you.